Okay, so the title of this is going to be Deductive Reasoning and Laws. Okay, so deductive reasoning is how we assume things with certain specific laws or statements. We have three main laws that we work with. The first law is called the Law of Detachment. To symbolize the Law of Detachment, we say if P then Q, and P is true, therefore Q is true. Okay? So if we have an if-then sentence, for example, if I am hungry, then I eat. Okay, so that's our original sentence. We're going to underline the if part as our P, then is our arrow, eating is our Q. What happens with the law of detachment is that the first thing, so in our case, it'd be being hungry, actually happens. It's true. So we would say, I am hungry. If this happens, we can then conclude that Q is also going to be true. So we can say, therefore, our Q is actually true. So you would say, therefore, I eat. Okay? I'm going to move these down so we have more room. Okay, so that's an example of your law of detachment. The second law that we learned is called your Law of Contrapositive. So in the Law of Contrapositive, we symbolize it by P then Q. And in this case, what happens is the Q part does not happen. So we symbolize that by not Q. Okay? From that we can conclude that the first part did not happen. So we would say not P. And if you notice, whenever I do these three dots, I say the word therefore, because that's what the symbol is. Okay? So an example, we'll do the same sentence. If I am hungry, then I eat. So if I am hungry, then I eat. Okay, so we still start with an if-then sentence. In this case, the second part does not happen. So eating does not happen. We would say, I did not eat. Okay, because the opposite of eating is not eating. I would symbolize that by not Q. Because of that, we can confer that the first part did not happen. So the opposite of being hungry would be not being hungry. So you would say, therefore, I was not hungry. Okay. And our last law is going to be called the Law of Syllogism. And this one is probably the most tricky for students because it's a little bit longer than the others. So for Law of Syllogism, we're going to say if P then Q and Q then R, and what I want you to notice about R is we haven't worked with that letter yet. So I'm going to label that something new because we haven't heard about that yet. We can conclude that therefore the first part, P, then the last part, R, which was our something new. Okay? So we're going to use the same if-then sentence. If I am hungry, then I eat. Okay, and we're going to underline P, arrow, Q. And in this time, we're going to start with the Q part, which was eating. So we're going to start with that. What's important to remember is that this second sentence, okay, if this is our first sentence and this is our second sentence, has to start with the word if as well, because we have an arrow. So that means it's an if-then sentence. So I would say, if I eat, comma, then, and this time we want R. So we want something that we haven't heard about yet. So I'm going to make something up. I'm going to say, if I eat, then I have an apple. Okay, so we haven't seen that at all yet. So we're going to label our first part, eating, is our Q. Under our then, we put an arrow. The apple is R, because we haven't heard that before. Our last sentence, so if you can't tell, syllogism is the only one that's going to have the longest because you're introducing a new idea. You start with your first part. You would say, so therefore, your first part, being hungry. If I am hungry, then your last idea, I will have an apple. Then I will have an apple. Underline this part is your P, arrow under then. Having an apple is your R. Okay? So those are your three main laws to remember. Law of syllogism, law of the contrapositive, and your law of detachment. It would be a good idea to memorize the symbolic version as well as the examples, because that's another part that's on the SOL. So you should memorize the symbolics, the symbolic for law of contrapositive, as well as your syllogism. And that is it.